Welcome to the AntWalk podcast, crafting human capabilities. From Silicon Valley to the streets of Mumbai, we connect you with stories that are shaping the future of business and society. Every week, we bring you insights from world's most influential thinkers, leaders, and trailblazers. Our mission? To explore and expand the horizons of human potential and business growth. Hello, and welcome to this session of That Seat on the Table. In our endeavor to bring the best HR voices from across the globe, wherein we can talk about different HR priorities, different HR journeys, how learning and capability building is shaping across the world. So, on this podcast today, we have John Neral. John, welcome to this podcast. We would start with a very quick introduction about you, about your journey that you have taken, and how does John do what he does today?
Well, Sudhanshu, thank you so much for welcoming on your podcast. I really appreciate it. So where my journey is that today I help mid-career professionals who feel stuck, undervalued, and underutilized show up to find a job they love or love the job they have. And I help them do that by building a mid-career GPS to get them there. My journey, especially my mid-career journey, was one in which I felt exactly those same things. I was 14 years into an educational career where I started off as a middle school mathematics teacher, and I was ready for more. I wanted more responsibility, more impact. I wanted a promotion. And where I was working at the time, those opportunities were limited strictly because of the size of the organization or the district where I was working. So in 2010, I made a huge career pivot where I left a wonderful job in a wonderful district, and I took a job managing 21 instructional coaches across 13 middle schools in Washington, D.C. in the United States. And that opportunity for me accelerated my career in so many ways because the experiences that I gained on the job that were able to leverage my talent and expertise, but exposed me to a whole different environment and community and opportunity that I wouldn't have had I stayed where I was. And so my leadership grew, my managerial experiences grew. I developed better strengths in terms of giving and receiving feedback, for example. From there, I navigated a couple other jobs where before I opened my coaching practice full-time, I served as a training and staffing director for an educational nonprofit. And after a couple of reorgs there, I decided that it was time for me to exit that organization because I had an opportunity to help more people outside of that organization than I could inside of it. And that was the impetus and the motivation for me launching my career coaching practice full-time.
Excellent. And that is why we will keep the conversation around navigating mid-career transitions. How do we build capabilities for crafting our own unique professional value statements? And your journey from pure education in a middle school to now guiding others through their mid-career changes, it is truly inspiring. So you did walk us through as to your journey that you took from teaching to leading a group of instructional designers to helping others. Is there any specific, if you can reflect on a pivotal moment or realization where you said that this is the time I want to transition into this job of helping others strategically navigate their career with a sense of purpose and value? Can you reflect on that moment wherein you said, this is where I want to make a change?
I remember that moment so vividly because I was standing in front of a room of 25 eighth grade students teaching a lesson on how to multiply and divide fractions. And it was a good lesson. I knew it worked. I knew the students were going to get the information and the content. And I remember teaching that lesson and hearing this voice inside my head say to me, John, you can't do this the rest of your life. And I brushed it off at first because I worked in a great place. I worked in a school district where people went there and they retired from 30, 35 years later. And I'm about 11 years in, and I'm having this moment where I'm thinking, yeah, I don't think I can do this the rest of my life. And I brushed it off, and I did all those things that we're supposed to do in the mid-career journey, right? We're supposed to be grateful that we have a job, and we're supposed to be thankful that we're making good money, and we're supposed to be appreciative of the people we work with. I was doing all of those things, and I was still unhappy and I was unfulfilled. And the more I listened to that voice, the more I gave myself permission to see what other opportunities were out there. What did I want to do? Who did I want to help? Where were those job opportunities that allowed me to level up? And because I had been doing some consulting work and a lot of professional development and training outside of my school day, I realized that I did want to work with adults. It was just I wanted to help teachers be better teachers. So I looked at positions like department chair and department coordinator positions, curriculum directors, things like that. And what I found that often a lot of mid-career professionals find is that you're talented, you have wonderful skills, but breaking into a different organization that has a culture of hiring from within can be difficult. So I was getting to final round interviews, but I wasn't getting that job opportunity. And at that point, that's when I realized I needed to expand my geographical search and my scope a little bit further to see which organizations were more open to hiring talent from the outside that would allow me to go do the work that I did. And that process took ultimately, I'm going to tell you it took 2 years because I got the job offer in Washington, D.C., and then the budget got cut. So ultimately, it took me 3 years to navigate into that position. But that last year, I learned a ton as well. So it was the right time for me to make that move.
Absolutely. Now, we have all been there wherein we are so married to the job because of the obvious benefits that it provides to us, wherein we are no, and also making this transition, taking that leap of faith that this is what I ultimately want to do, and taking that leap of faith. It took you 3 years. In my case, it took me, I think, 4.5 years. I wanted to start my journey myself. It took me quite some time to quit my banking job and get into entrepreneurship. You also emphasize on the importance of creating a unique professional value statement. Okay. So what methods do you advocate for people to identify these skills? And how can honing these capability impact and improve our overall success? While people try, professionals try and struggle to navigate their career transition specifically. So how can this importance of creating a unique professional value statement, how do you emphasize that?
First step for helping anybody recognize that is to acknowledge that more than likely you have a really big heart. You care very deeply about the people you work with and the work that you do. And so when you listen to yourself speak about the work that you do on a regular basis, you speak in the plurality. You say things like, we did a great job. The team did amazing work. And the lift or the struggle then for these heart-centric professionals is that they don't like talking about themselves. So when they go to network or they go to interview, it can be very difficult and challenging for them to shift the conversation into I statements because they feel like they're bragging. And so one of the other things they often hear is that they need to pitch. You need an elevator pitch. You have 30 seconds. There is a time and a place for delivering a pitch. What I want to offer everybody today is that is dramatically different than a unique professional value statement. And the difference is in how you show up for it. So when you go to craft a unique professional value statement, it starts off with these 2 words, I help. And to craft that statement, you think about who are the people that directly benefit from your help day in and day out. So it might be internal partners within your organization. It might be a particular division or unit. It might be a certain customer or client base that you're selling to, but there is a specific audience that you help. And the more you can drill down and identifying some characteristics or adjectives about those people makes your unique professional value statement stronger. The second part is identifying what you help them do specifically. And I like to tag this into, this is your genius. It's that thing that you do better than anybody else, because that's where you're the most talented. So when you asked me to introduce myself a few minutes ago, I shared my unique professional value statement with everyone. I said, I help mid-career professionals. And then I clarified it and I said, who feel stuck, undervalued, and underutilized. To do what? Show up to find a job they love or love the job they have. So when I network and people follow me on LinkedIn or they see my posts on social and they hear that, I get to command the narrative, because now I'm telling you exactly what my value is. And when I show up from this place of, here's how I'm going to help you, the person who hears that, their brain receives that message very differently. They think of partnership and support, and typically shoulders start to drop, because they're like, okay, how can you help me? As opposed to, I need a job, I want you to buy this, I'm going to sell you something. And all of a sudden we kind of put the hands up and go, I don't really want to be pressured that way. The unique professional value statement, I like to say, it rounds out the edges and it allows you to have a much deeper conversation because of how you are going to help them.
It also starts with having deeper conversations with yourself, because in our workplaces, we are so accustomed to sharing the credit, saying that, no, if a job gets done, it's the team, it's the we get the job done. To kind of shift that from saying, this is what I was personally involved in, these are the values that I bring, this is what I can deliver, that requires some inward looking time as well. We need to look inwards. So that's a very nice input that you have given there. Now, as a mid-career transition coach, you also emphasize on the significance of strategic positioning of skills on resumes and LinkedIn profiles. We know a lot of professionals who have done wonderful work, who have done great work, but if you look at their LinkedIn or if you look at their resume, you cannot really understand if those keywords have been put. So it's a global problem. So from your experience, what are the common mistakes that professionals make in showcasing their skills? And how can they ensure that their profiles effectively communicate and send the right signals about their unique contributions?
I appreciate this question so much, because there are some immediate things that our listeners can do that's going to immediately give them some great ROI for that. So for example, when you are simply thinking about why you are ready for a new position or why you're ready for that promotion, I want everybody to think in terms of evidence-based results. In other words, is there a metric or data point that you can tag to your results that is going to be of value to the people you're talking to? If you don't have a number or percentage attached to that in some way, your work can't be quantified. And that's one of the biggest lifts right now, because I am seeing especially that people will say, well, I'm a hard worker, I'm a great communicator, I'm a team player. Honestly, nobody cares about that. They care about it in the sense of that's expected. It doesn't make you stand out in any way. So for example, when I was going through my career pivot and I was looking to go from my classroom and district coordinator job to more administrative roles, one of the things that I had on my resume was this data point about how I saved my district $10,000 in free technology. Right away, people were like, how did you do that? Tell me more, because budgets are a big deal. If you have the number of people you help, the results you get, where you've saved time, you've improved a process, if you can have a metric attached to that in any way, shape, or form, that will absolutely make you stand out. The second thing is I had a conversation yesterday with a recruiter colleague of mine who shared with me that especially when people are applying for jobs online, whether you're applying through a job board, say like LinkedIn or Indeed or another job board, if your resume gets in front of an HR professional and they are going to take a look at it, if you are not grabbing their attention within the first 7 to 10 seconds, because there is something in your resume that is going to trigger their brain to look at that data point and stand out, you're just like everybody else, and it's going to go in the discard pile. It doesn't mean that you're not talented or you couldn't do the job. You're just simply not playing, quote unquote, the game that is going to get someone interested in who you are and what you do. It's the same thing when you look at somebody's LinkedIn profile and we talk about optimizing your LinkedIn profile. If you don't have a headshot, that is exactly that. It is your head, neck, little bit of shoulders. You haven't cut anybody out of the photo. It has a clean and professional background. That's a judgment, right? People are going to judge your profile. I know we want to kind of eliminate judgment, but in the hiring process, that's what it is. You are being judged and compared against everybody else. So how does your profile optimize your brand? If you're not maximizing the banner behind your headshot and putting something there that is representative of your professional brand, be it a particular saying, or it's something about your industry or profession, if you just have that default plain bluish, gray, white banner that's behind you, it sends off a message that you don't know how to use the platform. So why would somebody be more interested in you? And then finally, think about the text that is under your name on your LinkedIn profile. On a resume, you're going to have SEO terminology that is going to trigger the applicant tracking system based on the kinds of positions you would be applying for. So you might have something like project management, sales executive, something along those lines. But on your LinkedIn profile, I offer my clients all the time, that is the best place to put, for the first time, your unique professional value statement. Starting off with either I help or helping, and put that there, because so often recruiters and HR professionals will simply see titles in those positions. And so it doesn't stand out. It doesn't make you memorable. Putting that unique professional value statement there will trigger their brain, get them to pause and take a notice. And ultimately what you all want is you want them to stay on your profile and scroll a little bit to read more on your profile to see why you are a great fit for their organization.
Absolutely. Is very similar to the left and right swipe on a Tinder, wherein you have 7 to 10 seconds to make an impression. So whatever's there on your LinkedIn, especially the banner, the keywords that you have put, the unique value prop, the value prop that you spoke about, it does make a difference. And I would definitely recommend professionals to kind of go through every word that you have said. And moving to the next question, you emphasize on storytelling in terms of signaling as well. So how do you guide mid-career professionals in shaping their career narratives? How can professionals make their career narratives more compelling and engaging for potential employers? How does that work?
Well, there are a number of protocols that are out there that can help people formulate their story. And the one that is the most popular and I believe the most widely recognized is the STAR method. So you craft a narrative based on the situation and the task, the actions you took, and the results you achieved. What I have found in coaching my clients, though, is that for some of them, it doesn't help per se. So they get caught up in feeling like they have to check all the boxes of, here was the situation, here was the task, and they get bogged down in the circumstances of the story rather than focusing specifically on, here were the actions I took and here were the results I led or I achieved. So I coach my clients on the STAR method. I think it's great. The other option, though, is to tell the story with a very clear beginning, middle, and end, and to do it from the perspective of the hero's journey. The hero, being you in this case, is that you achieved a certain result. And so that's the part of the story you want to spend the most time on, was how did you get the results? People make the biggest mistake, especially when they're interviewing, that they focus too much on the circumstance or the situation or the task, feeling like they have to give them all of this backstory. And then the next thing you know, they're like 5-6 minutes into their interview response and you've bored the heck out of the hiring manager. So to take that away, give the situation or the context as quickly as possible, but give them enough so that they understand it. But quickly move that story into the middle, which is, here's what you did. Here were the actions you took. Here's what you learned. And then ultimately, these were the results that I got. And it's important, and I will offer the listeners today, that a really astute hiring manager or interviewer is not only going to be listening to what you are saying, but they're going to be listening to how you say it. So when you get to the results part and they want to know what you did, if you find yourself slipping into, well, the team did this, or we did that, pause, say, yep, these are the things that we did. But specifically to answer your question, here's what I was directly responsible for. You turn it back to you. But in the end, the story's got to have a really clear beginning, middle, and end, and the ending must focus on your results.
These are very, very valuable inputs. One other challenge that we see a lot of mid-career professionals is that sometimes professionals get lost in what their job requires them to do today, what is needed today to perform, versus what capabilities are required for future growth. So how should they look at a longer horizon when you're looking at career building? So what is your advice to such mid-career professionals who get lost between making this choice of what is needed today versus what capabilities I need for tomorrow?
Well, that circumstance or scenario you just described is so endemic of what happens to many mid-career professionals, because it's what allows them to be stuck in what I call this executing mode. All they do every single day is they do. They have these insurmountable to-do lists, they're checking them off, and they're being great employees. They're getting things done, but they're just executing on those job responsibilities that they've been told, or that's what's in their job description. The thing I want to offer people, though, is that you need to make a shift from this executing piece to a more strategic vision. So think about it in this way. If you look at your week and you look at your calendar, you look at all the meetings you have. If you're someone that likes to color code things, great, but like color code all the things in which you are doing, right? And then look at a different color on your calendar for where you get to work on any kind of vision, strategy, or professional development. So where are you finding time in your calendar every week that allows you to grow and develop yourself? And the other thing to consider here is that this is an and circumstance and not an or. So by that, I mean, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can still execute on all those tasks you do every week and have time to strategize and vision about how you're developing your career to the next step. So one of the easiest things I offer my clients to do is get your current job description, get the job description of the position above you. And if your company doesn't provide it to you, you can find something pretty similar amongst the plethora of jobs that are advertised out there. Look at the verbs. Do a crosswalk comparing the verbs between your current job and your future job. And when you look at that second set of verbs in that future or advanced job you want to hold, start building a plan for what are the skills you need to build to get you there. That is what will ultimately help get you unstuck and start figuring out how to be more strategic in your career to position yourself differently. So when you're having that internal conversation or you're networking with colleagues and ultimately getting to that interview, and you get asked this question of, why do you believe you are the best candidate for the job? You now have evidence to talk about the weeks and the months and the years you have put in preparing and planning for this moment in professionally developing yourself to get there.
Absolutely. And now, this very clear example that you give of looking at your calendars and understanding what is the time spent on doing stuff and the time that you spend on building capabilities, learning for the future. It's a very good starting point to start thinking about it. That are we totally caught in doing stuff that is required? So absolutely beautiful points. And at AntWalk, that is the kind of capability platform that we have built, where the idea is that at every role you should be able to get a glimpse of capabilities that are required for the future, and then you can work towards it as well. So, okay. Absolutely great points, and I'm very sure that the listeners who would be tuning in, they will get a lot of good inputs through this conversation that we are having today. So the next question, John, is about showing up. Now, you have used that word quite a few times, and it is something that you help people a lot with. So showing up is highlighted, you highlight it as a key factor in achieving the desired results. Can you elaborate specifically on this point, the importance of this aspect of showing up, and share some success stories where clients have benefited from, showing up, showcasing their skills and qualities?
Sure thing. When I was managing talent and I had people directly reporting to me, one of the things I would often hear from them is, I want to be promoted. I need to show up more, or I've been told I need to show up differently. What I also found was that context started to get very vague. And I often equate it to when people would come in and they'd interview for a job and they would say to me, well, you should hire me because I'm a team player. And I would pause and say to them, how do you play on a team? And they'd go, well, you know how you play on a team. You're a good person. You communicate. You're trustworthy. I said, oh, okay. I need to make sure we play the same way. When I developed my Show Up 6 strategies, I did it as an opportunity to norm a conversation around what showing up means. So each letter in Show Up stands for a different strategy, and they are setting ground rules, having intentional conversations, owning where you are, welcoming new opportunities, using your genius, protecting and promoting your brand. And when I work with my clients and we go through these Show Up 6 strategies, they are woven throughout the coaching relationship. And for some, we may need to spend a little more time on the O and the W, owning where they are and welcoming new opportunities. For some of my leadership and executive clients, we're focusing a little more on having intentional conversations and setting ground rules. And for others, we focus on using their genius and protecting and promoting your brand. But one of my favorite success stories comes from my client, Jennifer. So Jennifer, when we started working together, worked for a Fortune 50 company and was very frustrated that she hadn't gotten promoted. She felt like she was doing all the things, but she wasn't sure if the organization still saw her as valuable. So throughout our coaching relationship and working through these show up 6 strategies, I asked her one day, so Jen, what's your professional brand at work? And she said, well, I think it's that I'm a good employee and I think I'm well liked. And I said, hey, do you think or do you know? And she said, I think. I said, okay, we got to know. So here's how we're going to do that. I offered this conversation for her to identify a few people within the organization whom she trusted, and that she could go and she could ask several branding conversations or questions to that would give her the information she needed versus the information she wanted in having an intentional conversation. So the H in having an intentional conversation here has one purpose. It is to move the relationship forward. And you move the relationship forward because you get the information you need to inform future decisions and not the information you want. So for example, we all want to hear we're a nice person. We all want to hear we do great work. It's not going to help us necessarily when we are trying to advance our careers, because we want to know what we're doing well and what we need to be working on more specifically that's going to help strategically position ourselves for that promotion. In the scope of those conversations, what Jen learned was that there was a reorg. She moved accordingly, but that she needed to be a little bit more strategic in positioning herself for this next opportunity. And so there were things that she worked on with these trusted colleagues to specifically navigate some of the organizational politics, increase her visibility, demonstrate some more leadership presence, and show up from that place of value and service that was going to be able to be leveraged in a promotion. What I can tell you is that I want to say we're coming up on 2 years now. About 2 years ago, she was promoted into a senior executive level role and has been thriving in that role since. She is doing incredible work. She will always, always, always say to me, had I not had those conversations, I would not have known what my brand was and what I needed to be doing differently to get this promotion.
It's akin to doing a brand audit. You do at brands periodically do check with people as to how you stand, how you're perceived inside your organization. In fact, a lot of coaches advise it to do it in their personal lives as well, as how do you think you're perceived as a person in your professional life, in people who you trust. You know? We do it in an organization level. You need to make it more confidential, but yeah, it is a great tip. And the second part, the part that you spoke about, being open to challenges, open to opportunities which help you climb the ladder. Not every opportunity that you get is the right one for you. So there again, the careful evaluation of where you want to take your careers, that is very, very important. So okay, so beautiful points. Then coming to leadership, right? How do you see mid-career professionals preparing themselves, especially people in their late 30s to 40s, wherein you have to start taking different levels of leadership roles? And what capabilities do you think are important for someone making that transition?
The first place I would offer for them to start is to take a look inside of their organization and look at what's valued at the level above them. So in some organizations, especially if they're predominantly growth focused, it might be about how is that person in that role above you, how much are they bringing in revenue, how much are they attracting new business? And for you to be eligible for that kind of promotion, what experiences do you have either in a supportive role or in a semi-leadership role where you've been able to help drive that increased revenue or business? again, it comes back to what are the competencies and the skills that are valued in that organization that are going to make you more visible, or they're going to make you more considered for that particular role. So the first place is take a look inside your organization and see what is valued. Secondly, once you've identified that, start building a plan for how you can get those experiences. In some organizations, you're allowed to, in some cases, they call it go on a detail, where you're working in a different department and you're gaining those experiences for 90 or 120 days, and then you go back to your previous role. You may be able to allocate part of your time. Some organizations may offer you a passion project where you could go and gain some certain leadership skills in that regard. But if you are thinking about leveling up your leadership internally, what I would strongly offer people to consider here is see about getting a mentor or a sponsor within that organization. So a mentor is someone who's going to help you along with your development. A sponsor is someone who is going to be actively campaigning for your advancement when it comes to promotional considerations or responsibility or leadership opportunities. The flip side of this is if you're thinking about leaving your organization and you want to go ahead and level up, what I would offer people is conduct a series of informational interviews with people at that level you are aspiring to go to. What are the things they see in their organizations that are valued? Have them take a look at your resume and LinkedIn and ask them to give you some feedback about where there are some identifiable gaps and what you could do to start bridging those gaps. So those are a few things I would just offer people in terms of when you want to level up and you know the level you want to go to, get the information you need, because what ultimately will happen is you will sit in an interview and you will sit in that interview and you will be asked to share and even defend why you are the best person for the job. Whenever we're asked that question in an interview, keep in mind that the hiring manager has some type of objection about your candidacy or your qualification. And they are looking to see how well you are able to manage that objection and, most importantly, overcome it.
What you said first, the first step towards that starts with you opening up and seeking out people to mentor and sponsor you. A lot of professionals, especially after 10-15 years in their career, they're not very open to seeking help from others. And that is, one thing that I've learned from working with great professionals is that they do seek help. And the better you all get, you understand the leverage that you get by asking people not just to help you out, but also sponsor you works really well.
Yeah, and if I can just interject real quickly with that, though, one of the hurdles at mid-career is that some people think like they should have it all figured out. They should need a mentor, and that couldn't be further from the truth, because you've obtained a certain level of success, but if you want to get to the next level, leverage the people around you that might be willing to help you and advocate for you. And we know, and not to sound cliche here, but it is absolutely a sign of strength and awareness as opposed to a weakness in asking for that kind of help.
Especially having the social capital or the professional capital, wherein and you have people in your network who can help you out. So that is where the term your network is your net worth comes in. So you need to know people and you need to be open to ask people to help you. And one thing that I've learned as an entrepreneur is I reach out to friends and ask for help, to make introductions, to give me feedback. And as you're rightly saying, you cannot possibly know everything, you cannot have everything figured out. And that is my learning as a professional in the last 3-4 years. When you start off something from scratch, there are multiple areas that are blind, and the best way to do it is talk to somebody who has done it, somebody who can give you good advice, somebody who can mentor you, rather than trying to figure it out yourself alone. So that is where the things that you have said make a lot of sense. right? Now,
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
now the last few decades have been, rapid changes in technology industries. Skills are getting, have shorter shelf life. How important is continuous learning and upskilling for mid-career professionals, and what strategies do you recommend for incorporating continuous or ongoing capability building into one's career plan?
It's huge. And it is something with which it shows your desire to find ways to improve and increase your value to your current or future organization. There are so many pathways now that are available to people for improving their skills or their professional development. And admittedly, some of them don't cost any money at all. So, for example, someone may be listening and think that it's important for them to get an advanced degree. And if you've weighed out the pros and cons of that, or your industry requires it, that's certainly an easy but sometimes expensive way, if your company's not going to fund it, to improve your professional development. Additionally, you may take some certifications or some courses. You may attend conferences or workshops, be it in person or virtual. But then there are things that are available, such as LinkedIn Learning or courses, places like Coursera or Udemy, where you have an opportunity to learn and gain a skill set that's there. And then there's some great things on YouTube that's not going to cost you anything. And you can, I always say, you can go to YouTube and get anything you want. If you need to pick me up and you need to go look at a really cute dog or cat video, it's there. If you need something to make you laugh, it's there. If you want to be entertained, if you want to be challenged, if you want to learn something, it's on YouTube. Right? You can find it there. But here's the crux that I want to offer people to think about how you position that when you're networking or you're interviewing. When you talk about your growth, talk about it from these particular standpoints. Why were you curious? Why were you curious to learn this particular thing? And what did you believe that learning that thing was going to get you? Right? So when I was, and I'm so thankful I never have to do pivot tables in Excel anymore because my business doesn't require it. But like, I struggled with how to do pivot tables at work, and I would go on YouTube and I'd be like, okay, how do I figure this thing out? So you figure out like, okay, what is that thing going to get me by learning? Then think about, why does the organization care about it? That's the part people often miss. So you have this intrinsic motivation for doing something, but you need to tie it back into, why is your organization going to care? And when you tie it into that and you say how, look, this makes me a better professional because here's what I am doing with this information, or over the next 6 months, here's where I'm incorporating this new certification, degree, learning, whatever that is. You are communicating that you refuse to be stagnant. You are always growing and developing, and that is because it increases your value. And your company is going to pay for that, or somebody else is going to pay for that. And pay for that meaning they're going to pay for your value.
One question that, a lot of people think about making career moves, but we discussed it briefly during our conversation, wherein not every opportunity is the right opportunity. So how do you assess whether a career or an organizational move? You gave the example of Jennifer to that extent. So how does somebody assess whether the move that is in front of me is the right move? You have a beautiful 4F framework. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. So the 4F framework is a lens, if you will, that any mid-career professional, anybody in general, but you're going to use these 4Fs to essentially evaluate whether the position is the right one for you. So the 4 F's are fit, function, finance, and forward. So to break them down, when we talk about fit, it is about working for an organization that you believe fits and aligns to your values and goals that are important to you. So there might be something about the organization that you believe is a great fit because of who they help, what they're doing. I often use the example that, God forbid, you lost somebody to lung cancer, you probably wouldn't go work for a tobacco company, right? Just wouldn't fit. But if you have an interest, let's say, in fitness, working for an athletic company or a sports team, that might be a great fit for you. So you think about, where do you feel like you are going to align most closely with what the organization's doing? So that's fit. The second part is function. And the function are the day-to-day job duties and responsibilities you're going to be performing. You will assess the function based on the job posting or the job description that you would see online. Now, keep in mind that when you go to apply for a job and you see all of the things that are listed in a job posting, it is typically a laundry list of things that they want somebody to do. And if you can say you could do 100% of those job duties and responsibilities, you're probably not the best candidate, because there should be a few things you should be growing within the position. So, but you want to think about the function. What are you going to be doing every day? Does it get you excited to get up and go to work every day, knowing what you're going to have on your plate and your calendar for that day? The third F is finance. We have to talk about money. Money is important. Money allows us to acknowledge our responsibilities and obligations, and it allows us to take care of the people in our lives and the organizations or charities important to us. But also, it allows us to have some fun and to do some things, right? We work hard. We should be rewarded for that. And then finally, the last F is forward. And this is one of the things that I work so hard with my mid-career professionals on, is that when you think about forward, how does this position you are thinking about applying for or interviewing for, how does that move your career forward for the next 2 positions after it? So you said earlier, we talk about mid-career professionals. We're talking about mid to late 30s, mid 40s in that kind of regard, maybe a little even late 40s. More than likely, this is not going to be the job you retire from. So how does forward make you show up from that place of value and service that allows you to say, great, when I'm in this next job for 2, 3, 5 years, I'm going to be ready for this job after that, and then the one after that. Having a plan and being strategic about your career development is why the 4 F's work. So you can always think about it in terms of fit, function, finance, and forward. And the last thing I'll offer everybody is this. That's about how you're evaluating whether or not you're applying for a job. It absolutely applies to how you interview for that job. So when you go in and you're talking and you're in that first, second, third, final round interview, you are assessing their fit for you, the function you're going to be doing, the financial compensation package. And if you ultimately believe this organization is the place where you get to grow and do your best work, because they're going to help you move forward as well. So you can use it for the job, you can use it for the interview as well.
This framework is really effective, and I've seen this work as well, because I know a very close friend of mine who was stuck in mid-career. He wanted to make a career transition into a new technology. So he took a step back, actually, in terms of one of those F's, financially. He took a pay cut to get into a role that gave him a better fit, function, and forward. And he said, I might get lesser salary for the next 9 to 12 months, but I will ensure that I learn enough to move my career forward. And 5 years down the line, he's on a 3x salary than he was. So especially because the technology has shifted the job profile so much. It does makes absolute sense, John. So
Hmm.
I'm very sure that this framework is very, very effective.
I'm glad. Thank you.
You help a lot of mid-career professionals, and I would love to you spoke about the journey that you took. I would love to also hear more about your personal journey. Can you recall an instance where in your career you felt stuck, undervalued, or underutilized, and how did you personally navigate that situation?
When I was working for an educational nonprofit, and I want to say I loved my 5 years there. It was an amazing organization with tremendous growth opportunities. And I came in, it was one of those kind of jobs where a colleague of mine said I should go interview for, and I brushed it off, and they were like, John, just go interview. And I did, and I'm really glad I did, because it was 5 of the best years of my career that I was there. But when companies change and evolve, restructuring happens. And so I saw my job shift 3 particular times while I was there. And in the last restructuring, my focus was narrowed. So I was tasked and charged with solely focusing on onboarding and some training. And admittedly, it wasn't what I wanted to do. I had aspirations of bringing a coaching program into that organization. And at the time, it just wasn't a business decision that executive leadership was willing to invest in. But I was very thankful they still cared about me, right? Because they said, look, John, this is where we see you. This is where we need you. Okay, thank you. And I remember going through that reorg and sitting in my office and thinking like, yeah, I want to do more. And so I had a phenomenal relationship with my vice president, whom I reported to. And to this day, she is one of the most amazing leaders I've ever had the opportunity to work with. And I walked into her office one day and I said, can I talk to you for a minute? So I'm going to show up and have this intentional conversation with her because I need to get some information here. And she said, yeah. And she's sitting behind her desk and she's working on some things. And I looked at her and I said, I'm having this conversation because I trust you. And I'm going to say something and I'm going to ask you to respond to it. And however you answer, because I know you're going to answer me honestly, the first thing I'm going to say to you is thank you. And then I asked this question. I said, may I ask you my question? Because I need to get the buy-in. She says, yes. So, okay. I looked at her and I said, I've been doing a lot of thinking and reflecting about this last reorg. And the way I see it is that I'm essentially put on an island. I'm given a very specific task and I'm capable of doing a whole lot more, but I'm not seen in that way. And so the way that I see my situation now is that I'm stuck. There really is no pathway for me to advance. I'm not going to get a raise, certainly not getting promoted. I'm not going to get a bonus. And I'm kind of like left on this island to die. How accurate am I? I had relived this conversation and planning and prepping for it, that when I asked that question, how accurate am I? That question was so clean and so clear that it was easy for her to answer. And she looked at me and she said, they don't get you. They don't get what you do. They like you, they value you, but they don't see all of these other things that you do. And the conversation went on and on. And she looked at me and she said, you know, you're very smart. And I looked at her and I said, well, thank you. But I left that meeting with such clarity. And here was the clarity that I had. I was valued, but not in the way I saw my value. I was liked and respected, because they could have fired me. They could have let me go in the restructuring. They chose not to. So I will always, always, always be very appreciative for that. But the other thing I learned was that if I really want to do the work I wanted to do, I wasn't going to do it there. It was too much of an uphill battle, and it wasn't a fight I wanted to have. My goals were not the organizational goals. And look, that company's super successful, so they're doing all the right things for them at that time. No, nothing wrong there at all. It's just what I wanted to do wasn't fitting. So it was 4 weeks after that conversation I had with my VP that I went back down to her office, and with a tremendous amount of gratitude, I resigned. And I resigned because I had an opportunity to help more people outside of that organization than I could inside of it. And that has been the primary driving and motivating factor for why I do what I do today. Because I remember that incident and several other incidences in my career where I did feel stuck and undervalued and underutilized. And so being able to navigate out of that, part of my mission and vision in my work is that I want to make it easier for people to do that. I want to give them the tools and the strategies that I know work, that are going to help them navigate toward whatever is next, because we spend a tremendous amount of time at work. Work is important to us. And oftentimes we work a lot, right? So why shouldn't that work be fulfilling and meaningful? And that's another driver for me in my business, is to help people find that work where they truly have the best fit.
Absolutely. And many professionals would have thought of having one candid conversations with themselves and with their bosses to just like the conversation that you had with your reporting manager. This is the way you dealt that entire journey, and which paved the path for you to pursue what you felt the purpose you had, and now you're helping other professionals do the same. So we're towards the end of this wonderful conversation, John, and I'm very sure that there are a lot of valuable inputs for not just mid-career professionals, but professionals in general. So as we wrap up our conversation, if you had one piece of advice or a key takeaway you would like our audience to remember about navigating mid-journey transitions and building a successful career, what would that be?
That every mid-career professional out there needs a GPS to whatever is next. And that GPS has 4 components. Part 1 is preparation. Know your value. Know why you want to do the work you want to do. Let the 4 F's be the guide for helping you figure out what those next steps are going to be. Step 2 is about positioning yourself strategically in the marketplace. Make sure that when you have clarity about what you want to do, that all of your branding documents, particularly your resume and your LinkedIn, are aligned accordingly to help you navigate things like an applicant tracking system, as well as any networking conversations, that you can be that person that you have on your resume and your LinkedIn. The 3rd step is promoting who you are and what you do. When you show up from that place of value and service and you communicate your unique professional value, you do it whenever you're networking or interviewing, because that's how you're going to help them. Imagine using your unique professional value statement to answer that dreaded "tell me about yourself" question when you're in an interview. And you change the dynamics of that interview simply because you start off with, "Here's how I'm going to help you." And then lastly, think about what it means for you to show up. However you incorporate those show up 6 strategies, think about where you get to do them day in and day out that continually gives and adds value to the organization, that allows you to show up in that way where at the end of the day, you take a step back and go, "I did good today." When we do good every day, we have a great day. Not every day is going to be great, but when we do good every day, over the long haul of our career, we get to do phenomenal work. And that's the joy in navigating mid-career, is that it sets you up to ultimately do the best work you've ever done in your career.
Absolutely. And the first stepping stone, which you said, knowing your value, that is, so important. We get, lost and confused between what value and price is. We often look ourselves at the paychecks that we receive and see this is our value, but the value that you as a person and a professional bring to organizations, especially doing what you said, are you feeling good? Are you doing good? And is that incrementally adding towards doing a great job? And that entire reflection of a professional's journey, I'm very sure this entire conversation has added value. And thank you, John. Thank you for taking time out for talking to me, talking to AntWalk. And it's our endeavor to help organizations and professionals build capabilities that helps them get their priorities in life. So this conversation is absolutely wonderful and value add to our listeners and all those who join in. So thank you so much. Any last words, and then we can wrap this up. And it's been a wonderful last 1 hour listening to you.
Well, Sudhanshu, thank you for allowing me to come into your space and spend some time with you and your listeners. What I want everybody to know is that you and I have had several conversations before this, and I appreciate everything you and your team are doing at AntWalk, because it's just a phenomenal opportunity and endeavor that's out there. And I'm so proud of you for putting that out there and such, because it's just going to help organizations in a completely different way. And I'm just honored to be able to spend some time in your space and add to this conversation. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for being here. And I look forward. We have had conversations, and I look forward to having more conversations with you as we take this journey. So thank you so much, and you have a good day. And yes,